And so on your website, you share, you have hundreds and hundreds of book summaries, but you also had a subsection called books worth rereading, and it's only like a few dozen books in there. So what are these books that kind of make that kind of separate the good books from the books worth rereading? Like, how do you describe those books?
They're books that have had a tremendous impact on me in one way or another. It could be relationship wise or philosophy or business or investing, but for some reason it struck a chord with me. And over the years, that's a list I review too, where at the end of the year, I might think this book merits being on that list, but then I revisit it in a year or 2 years and it's sort of fallen by the wayside. So it's kind of this continual culling process and making sure that these books really remain top of mind. And some of it is pretty straightforward and pretty common, I would say, and others are more esoteric and not on too many other reading lists. But I found that a lot of kind of early to mid 1900s business books really speak to me. The language is really simple. It's people like Henry Ford and Mr. Firestone, and the way that they talk about their business is just so crisp and clear. And I really enjoy that. And of course, Rockefeller falls into that as well. But those are books that I re-listen to a lot. They're all books that I have on Audible, have them on Kindle, have physical copies, and once in a while, it's worth re-listening to one of those rather than kind of finding that new shiny thing that you think you're excited about. But revisiting those classics is often as beneficial, if not more so.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Like there's the books that change your life have so much great information. Like you can't consume it just the first time around. It's like a great movie. You have to watch it multiple times, or you have to read this book multiple times to get out all of the gems in it. And I love that you have that section. And it's definitely like when I'm looking for a book to read, I go to that section first, see like what does Blas highly recommend, and then add it to my like book wish list.
I appreciate that. And, Epictetus had the line that no man steps into the same river twice. And it's one of these things that people always ask, what are some of your favorite books? And it's a very fair question. And as important or interesting, I think, is what other books did you have to read to make that book stand out to you, right? Because the phase of life that you're in, the mindset that you're in, what you're dealing with, problems or, good things, all those things impact kind of the state and if you're ready for a book or not. And revisiting it, you're naturally going to be in a different spot, right? And sometimes some parts of it will stand out more than others. And that to me also took a little bit to learn where it felt like rereading was a waste of time, right? The whole point of taking all these notes was so I didn't have to reread. But at the end of the day, if it really is something that's worthwhile, it is worth spending that extra couple hours rereading the book, revisiting it, and it's amazing how often it does pay off.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that piece of advice. Like I'm trying to incorporate more like rereading of those great books or books that changed my life into my reading schedule, and because it kind of gets addicting into like, hey, let's read the new shiny thing that's out. But yeah, it's so important to just take that time to reread those books that had a huge impact on you. And Blas, so we've been talking a lot about books, and like I consider you like as a professional reader. So I was wondering if you have any other like reading tips you could share with listeners, or advice for people who are just discovering their love for books.
I think Naval said it cleanest, and it's read what you love until you love to read. And I think that's correct. There's no right place to start, and it's a personal journey like everything else. You figure out these things that really speak to you, and it might be sci-fi, it might be comic books, it might be research papers. It doesn't really matter, but it ties back to I think what we are saying earlier, where if you have this faith and kind of this idea that everything you learn will benefit you at some point, it really doesn't matter all that much where you start. If you're curious about it and it speaks to you and it sparks you, then great, start there, and that'll open up other fields where you might not be comfortable with some of these ideas or topics today, but you have the confidence and the interest to dig into it. So yeah, I think listen to what interests you, and that'll open up a lot of doors.
Yeah, it's such a simple but yet effective piece of advice because if you just follow your curiosity, it's like you're never going to be bored with reading because you're always interested in the next thing you're reading. So yeah, that's a wonderful tip.